The Galactic Council had never encountered a species like this. The chamber stretched endlessly, a cathedral of polished obsidian and glowing runes, each symbol a testament to millennia of power and order. Representatives from thousands of star systems filled the circular dais, their forms as alien as the laws they had upheld for centuries. Their expectation was simple: new species bowed, accepted guidance, and acknowledged the hierarchy of the galaxy. That expectation shattered the moment the humans arrived. The humans entered quietly, unassuming. They did not display the customary gestures of submission, no low bows, no ceremonial protocols, no signaling of feigned respect. Only presence. The council whispered among themselves, underestimating the weight of that presence. The human's representative did not carry a weapon, did not display technological marvels, did not beg. They simply waited. When the council spoke, it was with the condescension of absolute authority. Their offer was dressed as diplomacy, a thin veil over dominance. They outlined terms the humans should accept, and predicted compliance based on historical precedent. Every word carried the unspoken threat: agree, or extinction will follow. The chamber hummed with confidence. Every species had folded before now. Every one. The human response was astonishing in its simplicity. They spoke calmly, deliberately, without raising their voice. No threats, no rhetoric, no appeals to emotion. Just refusal. Not a refusal born from fear, not an attempt to bargain, but absolute, unwavering certainty. The words themselves seemed to carry a weight the council had not anticipated. Silence followed, stretching like a tangible presence through the room. Disbelief rippled among the delegates. Some laughed nervously, thinking this was a performance, a subtle trick of communication. Others froze, their complex exoskeletons trembling with an emotion they had long considered foreign: fear. The human's eyes held a quiet defiance, unyielding, unshakable. It was not arrogance, it was clarity. The council, used to bending civilizations through intimidation, felt the unfamiliar sting of uncertainty. Arguments erupted, voices overlapping in alien syntax, each member trying to rationalize the impossible. It must be a mistake, one whispered. Some hidden agenda, another insisted. They combed through centuries of records, histories of rebellion and compliance, trying to find a precedent. There was none. Every species had eventually knelt, every civilization had crumbled under the threat of counseled force. The humans had simply said no. Council members attempted to reassert control through procedural dominance. They offered extended negotiations, loopholes, compromises. Each proposal was met with the same response: calm refusal. No explanation, no manipulation, only principle. Some delegates felt a rising panic they could not name, an instinctive recognition that their strategies, their fleets, their accumulated power meant nothing against this species. The humans' composure did not waver, and that was the strangest thing of all. They exuded neither fear nor aggression. Their presence was an anchor, unshakable in the chaos of the council's disbelief. It was a quiet strength, the kind born not of superiority but of survival, of history, of enduring countless trials and emerging whole. Every gesture, every tone, conveyed an understanding that they were not asking for permission, not negotiating for mercy. They simply existed on their own terms. By the time the council realized that the humans were not bluffing, the mood had shifted. Shock had given way to panic. Delegates leaned toward one another, eyes wide, reconsidering assumptions that had gone unchallenged for eons. The humans had refused, not because of bravado, not because of ignorance, but because compliance was never in their nature. The council had expected submission. They had been met with something far more formidable: certainty. And in that certainty, the first cracks of doubt appeared. The council's chambers, once a sanctuary of authority, became a hive of unrest. Every delegate moved with sharp precision, yet every gesture betrayed uncertainty. They convened in emergency, summoning archives, projections, and consults from advisors who had spent millennia cataloging species, conflicts, and outcomes. Nothing in the records mirrored what they faced. No species had ever met the Council's terms with outright refusal, and certainly none had done so without fear. Data streams flowed across holographic panels, showing planetary histories, failed rebellions, and conquests. Analysts scrolled through simulations of resistance, expecting patterns, probabilities, and weaknesses. Every model concluded the same impossible result: humans should be panicked, compliant, malleable. Yet here they were, defying expectation with a tranquility that unsettled even the most logical minds. The council began to sense that they were dealing not with predictability, but with principle. Whispers turned into heated debates. Some demanded immediate military action, fleets at the ready to enforce compliance. Others urged caution, citing the humans' calm demeanor as a possible trap. In the corridors, advisors muttered about the humans' history of adaptability, their resilience in the face of catastrophe. The idea that an unknown species could possess foresight beyond the Council's comprehension struck fear deeper than any weapon could. Psychology, normally an afterthought in interstellar diplomacy, became critical. The Council had built empires on intimidation, manipulation, and overwhelming display of strength. Their confidence relied on the assumption that fear was universal. Humans, however, seemed impervious to it. Each refusal was not a challenge but a statement of inevitability. The Council's delegates had never encountered a species for which extinction was not a deterrent. Factional arguments fractured the chamber. One group suggested isolating the human homeworld, cutting off trade and communication, forcing capitulation. Another warned that any aggressive move would reveal gaps in the humans' defenses, potentially triggering outcomes the Council could not predict. The phrase, unknown variables, echoed repeatedly, a notion so alien that even the oldest members recoiled. Panic, previously hidden behind layers of protocol and tradition, began to bubble to the surface. The Council had relied on predictability. War, negotiation, and compliance followed patterns, eras of conquest and peace marked by routines. Humans disrupted every assumption. Advisors calculated timelines, resources, and contingencies, but every projection returned anomalies. Where they expected hesitation, there was certainty. Where they expected fear, there was calculation. The humans did not respond according to any model the Council possessed. Rumors spread within the ranks. Some claimed that the humans must be hiding a weapon of unparalleled magnitude. Others suggested a collective intelligence or networked consciousness that made them impervious to threats. Speculation, once a tool of analysis, became the only thing fueling decisions, and it fueled panic faster than any real evidence could. The delegates' composure cracked, revealing a vulnerability that no species had ever seen. By the end of the session, the Council faced an uncomfortable reality: they had underestimated humans. Every strategy designed to enforce submission failed against calm, deliberate resistance. The humans were not reacting to fear, negotiation, or coercion, they were simply acting on principle. The Council realized that their authority, their fleets, and their history of dominance might mean nothing. The galaxy had encountered a species for which their control was irrelevant, a species whose resolve was unshakable, and whose presence demanded recalibration of everything the Council had built. Even the youngest delegates felt it, a quiet, unsettling acknowledgement: humans were not just different, they were unknowable, and that unknowability was terrifying. The panic was no longer behind closed doors. It lingered in every projection, every whisper, every recalculation. The Council, long confident in its supremacy, had met a force that refused to follow the rules of power, a force that could not be predicted, coerced, or intimidated. The realization sank in, slow and cold: the humans had rewritten the equation. The Council scrambled to understand why humans acted as they did, why submission, fear, and compromise had no place in their decision-making. Analysts combed through centuries of human history, searching for patterns, for weaknesses, for any justification for their calm refusal. What they found instead was endurance, a species tempered by catastrophe, resilient beyond the comprehension of civilizations that had never faced extinction without aid. Humanity's chronicles were riddled with failure and rebirth. Wars that fractured continents, plagues that decimated populations, environmental collapse, and internal strife had repeatedly threatened annihilation. Yet every time, humans adapted. Every time, they rebuilt, often stronger, smarter, and more unified. Survival had not been granted, it had been earned through relentless persistence, ingenuity, and an unshakable refusal to surrender to despair. The humans' refusal to comply with the Council's demands was not arrogance, it was principle forged from history. They did not respond to threats because threats had never saved them. Each time a calamity threatened their survival, humans learned, adjusted, and created safeguards. To them, submission had always been a temporary option, and only when it served survival. But to surrender to coercion without necessity was an alien concept. Compliance on demand, simply to avoid conflict, was not in their nature. Council analysts noted that human cohesion was unlike any other species. Internal conflict existed, yes, yet it never fractured the species entirely. Disagreements, even violent ones, eventually gave way to unity when survival required it. Where other civilizations splintered under stress, humans centralized their efforts around shared objectives. Their principle-driven decisions emerged from the recognition that survival was collective, and history had taught them the cost of internal weakness. Even their technology reflected the same philosophy. Innovations were born not from ambition alone, but from necessity. Defensive systems were designed to deter aggression rather than to dominate others. Cities, infrastructure, and networks were resilient, redundantly built, often anticipating disasters far beyond their era. Each element of human civilization carried the imprint of adaptability and long-term planning, a warning to any species that assumed their peace was weakness. What struck the Council most was the humans' clarity of purpose. They did not argue out of ego. They did not seek glory. They spoke and acted with deliberate logic, grounded in the memory of their collective struggles. To humans, negotiation was meaningful only when conducted as equals. Coercion was irrelevant. When faced with the Council's terms, they had seen no equality, no logic, no merit in surrender, and no reason to compromise on principle. Their refusal was inevitable, a natural extension of the species' history and experience. Reports detailed the psychological impact on humans in moments of crisis. Unlike other species, stress did not produce paralysis or submission. Humans were capable of rapid, calculated response under extreme conditions. Even when confronted with potential annihilation, panic was replaced by decisive action. The Council began to understand that the human response was not emotional, it was strategic, derived from centuries of observing cause and effect under duress. Every simulation run to predict human behavior failed. Patterns, probabilities, and predictive algorithms were useless against a species that did not act solely on fear or desire, but on principle. The human's history had taught them that fear was a tool, not a master, that endurance and clarity could outlast any threat, that coercion had limits, but integrity did not. The Council had assumed control over obedience. They now realized they had encountered a species immune to the rules of authority. The realization unsettled them profoundly. Humans did not threaten for dominance, they did not issue ultimatums for power, and yet, in refusing, they had already shifted the balance. The Council could no longer rely on precedent or projection. Every assumption about power, compliance, and intimidation had been upended. The humans' calm, unwavering stance was more dangerous than any weapon because it was unpredictable, principled, and unbreakable. In studying humanity, the Council began to understand a truth that no archive had recorded. Resilience could not be coerced, integrity could not be forced, and a species forged in survival could defy the expectations of an entire galaxy. Humans did not negotiate under duress. Humans did not submit to threats. Humans simply endured, and endurance carried its own power, silent, absolute, and terrifying. The Council believed their power was absolute, their fleets unrivaled, their authority unquestionable. They had never encountered a species capable of making them pause, of forcing calculations to stall in hesitation. When preliminary reconnaissance reports came in, they expected fear, panic, or retreat. What they received instead was observation. Humans did not flee, they did not hide, they simply watched. And that watching carried certainty that no threat could shake. A demonstration of force was proposed. Fleets poised in formation, weapons primed, strikes prepared to test humanity's resolve. Every simulation suggested the humans would falter under pressure. The Council anticipated a show of weakness that would reaffirm their dominance. But the humans had already prepared, not for submission, but for exposure. They did not strike preemptively, they did not scream defiance, they revealed. Information streamed across the Council's systems as humans disclosed networks, defenses, and fail-safes. Entire planetary grids, autonomous security systems, and defensive arrays were mapped and displayed. The humans had anticipated every form of aggression, every possible incursion, every calculation the Council could devise. Their intelligence was not hidden, it was a statement. The demonstration was not about attacking, it was about making the Council see that aggression would achieve nothing. Panic surged again, this time coupled with disbelief. Fleets capable of annihilating worlds were now vulnerable in ways the Council had never accounted for. Communication channels, previously assumed secure, were accessible to human monitoring. Navigation routes and supply lines were catalogued. Every move the Council could make was anticipated. The humans had not revealed all their capabilities, only enough to show that resistance was irrelevant if the Council sought to coerce them. Advisors scrambled to update strategies, to find loopholes, to regain a sense of control. Every contingency was countered before it could be implemented. The humans' calm was deliberate, their actions calculated. This was not bravado. It was a meticulous preparation, built on centuries of facing extinction, of learning, adapting, and thriving where others would fail. Humanity did not bluff. Every display, every reveal, was grounded in reality. The Council attempted intimidation, shifting formations, issuing warnings, broadcasting ultimatums. Yet the humans did not respond with fear or aggression. They held position, unmoved, untouchable in demeanor. Their presence alone, backed by unseen but undeniable power, was sufficient to force hesitation. The Council realized that strength could be conveyed without conflict, that capability could be known without demonstration of violence, and that principle could outweigh terror. Even the most confident delegates felt an unfamiliar unease. Their reliance on fear and threat, the pillars of their dominance, had crumbled. Humans did not yield to coercion, they did not negotiate under threat. Their readiness and transparency rendered conventional strategies meaningless. The Council had always believed in superiority through demonstration of force. The humans had proven superiority through preparedness and principle. Every simulation, every projection, every history of conquest failed to predict this outcome. The humans had created an equilibrium that rendered coercion obsolete. The Council's fleets, their armies, their influence, all depended on the expectation that a species would react predictably under pressure. Humans reacted with logic, with readiness, with a steady resolve that no weapon could disrupt. By the end of deliberations, the Council understood something profound. The humans' power was not merely technological or strategic. It was rooted in psychology, in the certainty that they would endure, that they would not capitulate, that they could withstand pressure that would destroy entire civilizations. The demonstration had not been an attack, it had been a lesson in inevitability. The Council could strike, they could threaten, they could attempt manipulation, but the humans' calm confidence had already shifted the balance. In that quiet dominance, the Council recognized an unspoken truth. The humans had shown power in the absence of aggression. They had made it impossible for the Council to act without risk, and in doing so, humanity had claimed a position no fleet, no weapon, and no threat could undermine. The galaxy had glimpsed something new, authority born of principle, preparation, and unshakable resolve. The humans re-established communication, not with threats, not with demands, but with clarity. Every word they spoke carried calm authority, a recognition that dialogue could only proceed on equal terms. The Council listened, hesitant, weighing centuries of pride against the undeniable reality before them. Humans did not seek to dominate, did not demand tribute, and made no attempt to assert superiority. Their terms were simple: respect, recognition, and autonomy. Anything less would not be considered. The delegates, accustomed to compliance as a given, found themselves unmoored. Every protocol, every tradition, Every expectation of submission was irrelevant in the face of this certainty. The humans did not negotiate from fear, nor from desire for gain, they negotiated from principle. Their terms were a reflection of centuries of endurance, of survival forged through struggle, of a species that had learned the cost of yielding to coercion. The Council's arguments faltered. Attempts to intimidate, to bargain, to coerce, were met with patient clarity. The humans did not react with anger or panic, they responded with reason. Each point of contention was met with explanation grounded in history, in logic, and the experience of surviving calamities that would have annihilated lesser civilizations. Their reasoning was precise, unflinching, and immutable. As deliberations continued, the Council began to perceive the magnitude of what they faced. These humans had survived disasters that erased nations, that shattered civilizations, that rewrote histories. They had endured internal conflicts, plagues, and environmental collapse, and yet had emerged capable, united, and resilient. The refusal to submit was not defiance, it was inevitability. Their presence alone recalibrated the balance of power. The Council recognized that previous methods of control were obsolete. Threats of destruction, fleets poised for intimidation, and political maneuvering no longer held sway. Humans had shown, without aggression, that authority could exist through principle and preparedness alone. Their power was not measured by weapons or fleets, but by an unbreakable coherence, a certainty that no coercion could undermine. Humans offered terms for dialogue that were firm yet measured, a demonstration of their philosophy: respect is earned, not demanded, equality is not optional, survival is a principle, not a concession. The Council realized that any attempt to ignore or circumvent these terms would result in consequences beyond conventional understanding. Humans had created a framework in which coercion was meaningless and compliance was irrelevant. In the quiet that followed, the delegates understood that the rules of the galaxy had shifted. Authority would no longer be dictated solely by technology, fleets, or intimidation. The humans had introduced a new paradigm, a species whose influence derived from principle, foresight, and an unwavering refusal to yield under threat. Their power did not announce itself with violence, yet it compelled recognition through inevitability. Every decision the Council now faced was constrained by this reality. They could argue, debate, or attempt to assert dominance, but the humans' terms left no room for uncertainty. They had set the boundary of engagement, and within that boundary, all previous assumptions about control, hierarchy, and compliance were irrelevant. The galaxy had encountered a species that could not be coerced, intimidated, or dismissed. For the first time in history, the Council felt the weight of limitation. The humans did not seek conquest, they demanded respect. They did not threaten, they enforced principle. The delegates, long confident in the supremacy of tradition, hierarchy, and sheer force, were compelled to acknowledge a species whose quiet authority was absolute. Humanity had not shattered the galaxy with weapons, but with endurance, clarity, and unyielding integrity. In that recognition, the galaxy understood a truth that would endure for generations: power could exist without aggression, authority could be asserted without domination, and a species forged in survival could command the respect of all without ever striking. Humans had not merely survived, they had redefined what it meant to hold influence in a universe built on fear and hierarchy. The Council would never forget it.